No. 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 Why? Why, God Emperor? Why? Oh, God. Like, I woke up this morning to see the news of this, of Trump saying this, and it's just, fuck. Come on, man. Come on, man. Just.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
I mean, come on, Donald. Does this really seem like a good idea? Now, look, anybody who follows me for any notable length of time knows that I'm not an anti-Israel guy. I'm not an anti-Jew guy. Like, I generally speaking, do think that Israel is a valuable ally. Not our greatest, not even close to our greatest. They're not even, in my opinion, not even top 5. But, like, I don't have a problem with us having Israel as an allied state. But, like, do we really need U.S. territory in the Middle East? Like, we weren't trying to turn Iraq into U.S. territory, and so, like, we wanted them to be like a client state, sort of, in this, like, we weren't trying to turn it into U.S. territory. We were trying to make it its own nation. But if that seems like what Trump is trying to do here, is take the Gaza Strip over, make it a U.S. territory, a la Puerto Rico, or what he would like to do with Greenland, give it territory status, which I'm not even against that completely. I don't hate the idea of us having U.S. territory states, protectorate states, but I think they need to be limited to states in our direct sphere. So Greenland, Puerto Rico, hypothetically, say Cuba. If Cuba's communist government completely just went tits up one day, like the government's completely just destroyed, the people rise up and overthrow it completely, and then they apply to be, it's like, hey, we want territory status like Puerto Rico, like we have new democratic elections, we're going to open ourselves up to trade and tourism, and we would like, come build a couple military bases here, and, just give us we don't want statehood, territory status. Like, I would be okay with that. Like I said, Greenland, Puerto Rico, Cuba, hypothetically, but I'm like, countries in our direct sphere, literally neighbor parts who are directly next door to our continent. Not fucking Gaza, all the way across the ocean in the Middle East. We don't need a territory out there, Donald. Now, I'm going to read this AP article through, and it's just, like, I got to rant about this for a second, because, like, I can see why this seems like a good idea, okay? Because I can imagine a situation where, like, let's say best case scenario, if everything goes as smoothly as humanly possible, IDF pulls everything out of Gaza, everything they currently have in Gaza, all of their assets, everything, just completely pulls it out. America comes in, builds a wall along the entire Israel-Gaza border, like a big, beautiful wall. Using the same technology with the big metal stakes coming out of the ground and going up, like, 40 feet in the air, and having the big, bar at the top of it that, keeps people from climbing over it. Like, yeah, okay, and let's say we did that all the way around Gaza with, like, only one point of entry for people to get in and out from Israel, if that's even something that we would talk about. And like I said, so this is best case. And we do that, and we clean it up, and we rebuild the roads, and we rebuild the infrastructure, and, like, we build, like, a nuclear power plant that supplies cheap energy to the entire region. Probably not a good idea to, give Muslims access to, nuclear fissile material, but still, if it's U.S. territory, we could say there's U.S. oversight on the nuclear power plant, so there'd be no worry about that. But again, because best case scenario, or we'd use hydroelectric or tidal hydroelectric dams on the coastline, for instance, or not dams, but tidal power, But, like, we rebuild their infrastructure, we rebuild housing, rebuild their roads, rebuild all their hospitals, and then the only foreigners that are brought in are American contractors who are basically overseeing all this, and we basically employ as many Gazan citizens, so they basically have a hand in rebuilding their own territory, and then it becomes prosperous. And maybe, just maybe, with Hamas out of the way, and them again, if this is best case scenario, but with Hamas gone, and then them getting all these benefits, that maybe this could work. But it barely works with Puerto Rico. Like, Puerto Rico has a bunch of American benefits, and, you know, if they get hit with, like, a mild thunderstorm, half the island loses power for a month. Right? And those are Puerto Ricans. They're right next door. How are we supposed to maintain this territory? Like, I don't want American troops in Israel fighting Gazans on behalf of Israel. I do not want American troops in Gaza fighting Hamas on behalf of Gazans. You know, this is bad. This is not gonna. I don't think this is gonna turn out very well at all. Now, the other best case scenario here is that this is another Trump threat, sort of like, you know, the tariff cycle. I'm gonna, like, you know, Trump threatens to tariff a country. The country refuses to give Trump what he wants, and then you know, fuck. I had this pulled up. Let me find it. Shit. Where is it? Yeah, Trump wants a foreign leader to do something. Trump announces tariffs. Left claims tariffs won't work this time. Leader caves and Trump gets what he wants. So let's say that this is one of those situations where he threatens to turn Gaza into, and maybe, you know, BB's in on this, right? So, you know, in on this kind of con, that it's just like Trump threatens to basically turn Gaza into U.S. territory, and because Egypt and Jordan don't want American territory on their doorstep, they step up and say, no. We'll do better. We'll do our part. We'll take in some refugees. We will handle the rebuilding of this area. We'll make peace deals with Israel, like, you know, Abraham Accords 2.0. That could be the long game, that maybe this is, again, just one of the Trump threats that he likes to do. I'm going to do this if you don't do what I want, and then they always blink. It's possible. But still, this is really bad. Like, I'm not a fan of this at all. And I tend to like almost everything Trump does these days. But, like, I'm not a fan of this. But, yeah, no, let's read this AP article. What is it with AP needing 3 writers on a single article? Amir Madhani, Tia Goldenberg, and Zeke Miller. Like, why? President Trump suggested that displaced Palestinians in Gaza be permanently resettled outside the war-torn territory and proposed the U.S. take ownership in redeveloping the area into the Riviera of the Middle East. Trump's brazen proposal Tuesday appears certain to roil the next stage of talks meant to extend the tenuous ceasefire between Gaza and Hamas, or between Israel and Hamas, and secure the release of the remaining hostages held in Gaza. Provocative comments came as talks are ramping up this week with the promise of surging humanitarian aid and reconstruction supplies to help the people of Gaza recover after more than 15 months of devastating conflict. Now Trump wants to push roughly 1.8 million people to leave the land they have called home and claim it for the U.S., perhaps with American troops. Quote, the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. We will do a job with it too, Trump said at the evening news conference with Netanyahu by his side. The president, who made his name as a New York real estate developer, added, we'll make sure it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly we're talking about. So, yeah, I guess, like, it seems to be that the plan is, like, look, if you're a Palestinian and if you're the Palestinians that fled into Egypt or that fled into Jordan, you know, that got away, refugees, just stay. Just stay there. Let us rebuild, and then you can come back, or whatever. But anyway, let's just carry on. Trump outlined his thinking as he held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. at the White House, where the two leaders also discussed the fragile ceasefire and hostage deal in the Israeli-Hamas conflict and shared concerns about Iran. Trump said the U.S. would redevelop the territory after Palestinians are resettled elsewhere and turn the territory into a place where the world's people, including Palestinians, would live. He offered no detail about what authority the U.S. would use to take the land and develop it. Yeah, like, how does that work? Because the only way you can take a war-torn land like that is with U.S. military power. I mean, yeah, you park a small strike group, in the sea right outside, and then you just you get some Marines to basically just station some Marines there to keep the peace and basically keep the peace and protect the contractors that you bring in to rebuild the place. But I don't know, this just doesn't seem like a great idea. Yeah, of course, allies reject the idea. Egypt, Jordan, and other U.S. allies in the Middle East have cautioned Trump that relocating Palestinians from Gaza would threaten Mideast stability, risk expanding the conflict, and undermine a decades-long push by the U.S. and allies for a two-state solution. I mean, that's just classic Jordan and Egypt. They really don't want Palestinians living in their country because Palestinians are fucking wild people who blow shit up. And, well, I mean, you've heard all the stories. It's that words. I don't care. It's what there's literally no other Muslim nation for all their bloviating and bluster about human rights violations are ever willing to take in refugees, ever. Now, granted, we never want to take in refugees, but again, we are across the fucking ocean. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry issued a sharply worded reaction to Trump, noting their long call for an independent Palestinian state was a firm, steadfast, and unwavering position. Saudi Arabia has been in negotiations with the U.S. over a deal to diplomatically recognize Israel in exchange for a security pact and other terms. Quote, the duty of the international community today is to work to alleviate the severe human suffering endured by the Palestinian people, who will remain committed to their land and will not budge from it, the Saudi statement said. That's fine. This is just nation building. It's 2003 all over again. Now, to be fair, Gaza is a much smaller piece of land than Iraq, you know what I mean? Or Afghanistan. Well, we didn't try to rebuild Afghanistan. We tried to help rebuild Iraq. It's much smaller. It's already mostly developed. So all we have to do is just rebuild, tear down destroyed buildings and just build new ones and rebuild some roads. So, it's not outside of the realm of possibility something like this can work, but is it really going to be U.S. territory, or is it just something that we're going to do on behalf of the Palestinians out of the kindness of our heart? Which, again, I don't want us to do that either. I agree. I don't think Israel should get U.S. foreign aid. I don't think Gazans should get it either. Still, Trump insists the Palestinians have no alternative but to leave the big pile of rubble that Gaza is. He spoke out as his top aide stressed that a 3 to 5 year timeline for reconstruction of the war-torn territory, as laid out in a temporary truce agreement, is not viable. Last week, both Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, I think is how you pronounce that, and Jordanian King Abdullah II dismissed Trump's calls to resettle Palestinians in Gaza. But Trump said he believes Egypt and Jordan, as well as other countries which he did not name, will ultimately agree to take in Palestinians. Quote, you look over the decades, it's all death in Gaza, Trump said. This has been happening for years, it's all death. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes where they can be happy and not get shot and not be killed and not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza. Trump also said he isn't ruling out deploying U.S. troops to support the reconstruction of Gaza. He envisions long-term U.S. ownership of a redevelopment of the territory. The president's proposal was greeted with alarm by Democrats and a measure of skepticism by his Republican allies. Quote, he's completely lost it, said Senator Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut. He wants a U.S. invasion of Gaza, which would cost thousands of American lives and set the Middle East on fire for 20 years. It's sick. I mean, again, I really hope this is not something he's seriously considering. I hope this is one of his, I'm going to do this thing unless you do what I want, and then everybody just falls in line. We'll see what our quote. We'll see what our Arab friends say about that," said Senator Lindsey Graham. Yeah, Lindsey Graham, huzzah! A South Carolina Republican and a Trump ally. And I think most South Carolinians are probably not excited about sending Americans to take over Gaza. I think that might be problematic, but I'll keep an open mind. Well, of course, the most tepid response comes from fucking war hawk Lindsey Graham. The White House focus on the future of Gaza comes as the nascent truce between Israel and Hamas hangs in the balance. Netanyahu is facing competing pressure from his right-wing coalition to end a temporary truce against Hamas militants in Gaza, and from war-weary Israelis who want the remaining hostages home and for the 15-month conflict to end. Trump may be betting he can persuade Egypt and Jordan to come around and accept displaced Palestinians because of the significant aid that the U.S. provides Cairo and Amman. Hardline right-wing members of Netanyahu's government have embraced the call to move displaced Palestinians out of Gaza. Likely because they think that, if America takes it over, then, low-key, Israel can just take it over on their behalf. Hey, buddy, all this work you're doing here, let us help. We will help with reconstruction, and then we'll move a bunch of our people in here, and all those Gazans who you said could come back whenever reconstruction's done, they can just stay in Egypt and Jordan. Which, again, and I've said in the past when this conflict kicked off that I think it would probably be in Israel's best interest to just destroy Gaza altogether. And just, because the two-state solution thing is clearly never going to work. See, that's another reason why I think this is pointless, is because the two-state solution is just kind of a pipe dream. They've been trying for it for decades, and it just doesn't work because, every time there's a peace deal and a ceasefire on the table, Gaza always breaks it. Or the Palestinians always break it. It's always either Gaza, or it's always either Hamas or Hezbollah that breaks it. Quote, "To me, it's unfair to explain to Palestinians that they might be back in 5 years," Trump's Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff said. "That's just preposterous." Trump also signaled that he may be reconsidering an independent Palestinian state as part of a broader two-state solution for the decades-long Palestinian conflict. Quote, "Well, a lot of plans change with time," he told reporters when asked if he was still committed to a plan like the one he laid out in 2020 that called for a Palestinian state. "A lot of death has occurred since I left and now came back." Netanyahu's arrival in Washington for the first foreign leader visit of Trump's second term coincides with the prime minister's popular support sagging. The prime minister is in the middle of weeks-long testimony and ongoing corruption trial that centers on allegations he exchanged favors with media moguls and wealthy associates. He has decried the accusations and said he is a victim of a witch hunt. Being seen with Trump, who is popular in Israel, could help distract the public from the trial and boost Netanyahu's standing. Quote, "We have the right leader of Israel who's done a great job," Trump said of Netanyahu. Netanyahu praised Trump's leadership in getting the hostage and ceasefire deal. The prime minister also spoke glowingly of Trump thinking outside the box. Quote, you say things others refuse to say, and after the jaws drop, people scratch their heads and say, he's right." And that is generally true. Hamas, in a statement, decried Trump's comments. "We reject Trump's statements in which he said that the residents of the Gaza Strip have no choice but to leave, and we consider them a recipe for creating chaos and tension in the region," the group said. Netanyahu met with White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Witkoff on Monday to begin the daunting work of brokering the next phase of a ceasefire agreement. The Israeli leader said he would send a delegation to Qatar to continue direct talks with Hamas that are being mediated by the Gulf Arab country. The first confirmation that those negotiations would continue. Netanyahu also said he would convene his security cabinet to discuss Israel's demands for the next phase of the ceasefire when he returns to Israel at the end of the week. Witkoff, meanwhile, said he plans to meet with Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, or Tani, I'm not sure how you say that, in Florida on Thursday to discuss the next phase in the ceasefire. Qatar and Egypt have served as key intermediaries with Hamas through the conflict. Netanyahu is under intense pressure from hard-right members of his governing coalition to abandon the ceasefire and resume fighting in Gaza to eliminate Hamas. Bezalel Smotrich, one of Netanyahu's key partner Key partners vows to topple the government if the war isn't relaunched, a step that could lead to early elections. Yeah. That's really, I mean, I get it, like, but Hamas is kind of done. Like, all of Hamas's leaders is dead. Gaza is basically destroyed. There's, like, I mean, there's obviously still Hamas out there, but, like, I don't know. It's just, at this point, it does seem, like, excessive. I think that's why the ceasefire is kind of working right now, because everybody realizes that this is kind of pointless at this point. Hamas, which has reasserted control over Gaza since the ceasefire began last month, has said it will not release hostages in the second phase without an end to the war and Israeli forces' full withdrawal. Netanyahu, meanwhile, maintains that Israel is committed to victory over Hamas and the return of all hostages captured in the October 7th, 2023 attack that triggered the war. So we're kind of in like a limbo state right now where like nothing seems like is going to get done. And I mean, it's possible Hamas needs to go. I mean, of that, I agree 100%. Like, there cannot be a two-state solution as long as one of those states is led by Hamas. It just can't happen. And I mean, I know this seems like cuckoldry a little bit, that like maybe Israel should also consider giving the Gazans a little bit more territory to work in. Like, okay, fine. Hamas is destroyed. All their leaders are destroyed. We're going to expand Gaza's borders eastward. Give them more land to live in, you know? And, I mean, I know you'd have to displace Jewish families, in order for that to work. But, like, something's got to give. Something's got to give. That, or there doesn't need to be a state down there. You need to just, you know, basically force the Palestinians out of their country altogether and then just give the Gaza Strip back to Israel, and Israel should just level it and turn it into just a whole new section of Israel. It's just, there's no Gaza Strip anymore. But then you've got a bunch of angry Palestinians who are going to do terrorist shit from Jordan and from inside Jordan and Egypt. And then that'll radicalize other sections of the Middle East into getting pissed off at Israel. Like, it's a murky situation. I don't think we need to be this deeply involved in it. Like, no foreign aid, no foreign aid money, no American troops to Israel. And if Israel wants to continue to buy American weapons, by all means, I don't mind selling them weapons. But this is just, I don't know, it seems like a bad idea. It seems like a waste of time and resources. I'm not for it. I'm not for it. And like I said in the last video, when Trump does things that we don't like, we need to hold him accountable. We do not need to get complacent and lazy, and we also don't have to agree with every single thing the man does. We can push back. Remember, we pushed back on bump stocks, and he backed off. And then he ended up appointing Supreme Court judges that he knew would eventually overturn his bump stock ban once it got up to the Supreme Court. So, like, we have leverage. Like, Trump likes to be liked. He likes to be loved. And if enough of MAGA makes enough of a stink about this, he will walk it back. He has shown in the past that he is willing to do that. He will do what MAGA wants. We just have to, you know, we just have to let him know we don't want this. We also just got to make it clear that, you know, that we just got to make it clear that we're not a fan of this nation-building stuff. America first. It's what we voted for. Anyway, you know, subscribe and like this video and subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of stuff. Go to the links in the description where, you know, it's got my links to all my other channels. Check out my gaming channel on Rumble. Follow me on X, you know, all that stuff. You know, do the algorithm stuff. Throw me a bone.